All right, my friends, this is part 2 of our discussion on this article I was reading from United Income, what I think is one of the most important articles you will read when it comes to talking about retirement planning. And you need to stick with this second part as well, because I'm going to show you some statistics they share with us that have been, to this point, not discussed. The last episode we talked about how retirees, while living longer, the bulk of that newfound life is going to watching TV. In TV, the stupid box, what it does is it creates a lot of fear, unneeded fear in your mentality, because it's all sensationalism. It's all driven by creating fear in you. And so don't watch TV. You'll be happier. In fact, there's studies that show that. United Income shows some of that as well. They're talking about, we're going to get fear of crime, of all these different things. And just you don't need to do that. So if you're sitting there in retirement and you're healthier and you're wealthier and you consume a lot of this sensationalism via the mainstream media, news on the TV, regardless of Fox News or MSNBC or CNN, I don't care. Or if you read the papers, or if you read Facebook, regardless of what Facebook pages you're reading or websites you're reading, don't care. It's all based on sensationalism, clickbait, to get you to put your eyes on what they're selling so they can offer more advertising dollars. So that was the gist of the first round. Question was how much retirees are actually using these longer lives to sit in front of the TV, which is, I think, devastating. I just don't do that. You'll be happier. You want to be happy? Pay off your mortgage and don't watch TV. I mean, literally, I've been doing this for a long time, and this is what is just coming to I see this right here. The correlation between not watching TV and not having a mortgage and being happy is just mind-boggling. All right, so I want to focus on this one right here. As health and wealth has increased, cheap cost of living priorities have given way to quality of life considerations. Now listen to this, my amigos. Retirees are increasingly staying put and living in more expensive suburbs near urban areas instead of less expensive rural areas. Similarly, there is no relationship between the popularity of a state among retirees and the weather, tax burdens, or crime rate. That's amazing when you think about it. And watch this. We found that retirees are increasingly staying put rather than moving to warm, low-tax areas of the country. Didn't you think that everyone was moving to South Carolina or everyone was moving to Texas or Arizona? No, that's what I thought. Literally, that's what I thought too. And yet we're finding that's not the case. So watch this. In particularly, the share of retirees reporting they have moved in the last 5 years has fallen from a high of 23% in 1980, when the data was first recorded, to a new low of just 15% in 2015, according to the most recent data available. All right, so remember, the share of retirees reporting they have even moved is only 15% as of 2015. More tellingly, though, when retirees do move, they are more likely to move within the same county, not state by. So first of all, only 85% of the people are not even moving. 85% of the people are not even moving. 15% of the people are. The people who do move are moving from within the county, intra-county, not even interstate or inter-United States is in the county. In fact, only about 1% they have moved out of their current state in the most recent study. 1%. That is not indicative of a mass population moving from New York or California to lower tax and more warmer climes. I guess California would be the exception because they get pretty warm, but New York, Pennsylvania, Massachusetts. So it's just not, you're not seeing it. It's actually, I'm stunned. I am stunned by that. 1% of retirees, not the population at large, are moving to these areas. Now, that's not inclusive of, people who are mid-career moving from, I don't know, Portsmouth, New Hampshire to Atlanta or something like that, or Fargo, North Dakota to Las Vegas. I mean, that's not inclusive of that. It's just inclusive of retirees. But again, going back to the article I did 2 days ago, the YouTube channel I did 2 days ago, I think, on what makes retirees happy is a strong sense of community. And if you've been in this community for a while and you know your neighbors, you know your friends, you know the police, you know the guys and ladies over the city hall, it's hard to leave that behind. It really, really is, to go to the great unknown when you don't, even if the tax rates are lower and it's warmer there. The sense of community is all encompassing for retirees. I just find that amazing, actually. And so now that article said, now that's for Canadians, but a lot of it I think can be said here too, is that the sense of community was strongest, where happiness was highest in rural areas. So this isn't giving us indicating of what is happy for retirees. It's just saying what retirees are doing. They're staying in the suburbs. The article I posted 2 days ago, and I'll link to that here, was saying that retirees are happiest in low, not necessarily cost of living, but just rural, which would be synonymous, I think, with cost of living, below population dense areas, typically the lower cost of living. So this study that we're showing here is just saying people aren't moving, but it's not giving us any attributes to happiness. They're just saying people aren't moving, which is interesting. So the vast majority of people are staying put in these more expensive suburban areas. Yet, in our last study that I talked about, again, 2 days ago, the people who are happiness were in smaller towns, low density, in a more sense of a strong community. So it's just interesting. There's not a dichotomy there, not one mutually exclusive. It's just interesting because at the end of the day, we've been told that retirees, they do move to the south or southwest from the more Chicago and things like that. And we're just not seeing that much. It's interesting, actually, which would lend us to the credence that the sense of community is strong in terms of your retirement happiness. This follows a more general population trend. Since 1965, the share of U.S. population movement between, this just goes against what I just said. This follows a more general population trend that since 1965, the share of the U.S. population moving between states each year has fallen by over 50%, now accounting for just 2% of all households. I wonder if that has to do with mortgage debt. Because if you look at my book, I don't have it here. Oh man, I thought I did. If you look at my book, Strategic Money Planning, 8 easy ways to get your financial house in order. I use the example of Kevin and Brenda, who were leveraged to the max on their mortgage and couldn't sell their home to take the job in a state 6 states over. And I wonder if that has something to do with it. But I mean, think about it. Each year, the percentage of the U.S. population moving between states each year has fallen by over 50% in the last 50 years, now accounting for just 2% of all U.S. households. So 2% of all U.S. households are moving interstate, and only 1% of all retiree households are moving interstate. Retirees are staying put for reasons other than the fact they might already live in the areas of the country that fulfill stereotypes of the ideal locations for them. In fact, if there's no relationship between the popularity of states among retirees and the state's weather, tax burdens, there is no relationship between the popularity of the states among retirees and the state's weather, tax burden, or crime. For instance, the 5 states that have the largest population of retirees, California, Texas, New York, and Pennsylvania, and Florida, have annual rainfalls that are some of the highest in the country and include 2 states with the below average temperatures, but also include some of the driest and warmest areas of the country. Those 5 states have a wide variance in tax burden, ranging from low, Florida, which has taxes on average 6.79%, to high of New York, which has taxes of about 13%, which is the single highest state tax burden in the country. While Florida is one of the most popular locations for retirees, it also has one of the highest crime in the country. Pennsylvania, on the other hand, is one of the safest states, and it also has more popular locations. It is also one of the most popular for retirees today in a northern climate. It's interesting. So Pennsylvania is cold, higher tax rates than Florida. Florida is warm, lower tax rates. Pennsylvania has lower crime. Florida has higher crime, and either of these are amongst the top 5 in retirees. California, California, New York are both in there. Amazing. Another way to visualize this is by rank ordering states by the percentage point increase or decrease in the share of U.S. retirees living in each state from 1967 till today. As an example, California has the largest net gain of retirees during this period, increasing the share from about 7% in 1967 to over 11% in 2017. The relatively high tax, high crime state, but good weather state is strikingly different from the state that experienced the second largest increase in retirees, which would be Florida. low tax, high crime. But see, these things are interesting here. Relationship between state tax burden and share of retirees. So this is the share of retirees. And as you get higher and higher, all right, so here's California at 11% of its state population is retirees, but you can see it's definitely not a low crime place. And here's a high crime place. I don't know what that would be, Florida maybe. And yet, they have a higher percentage of retirees, about 7%. And yet here's a low crime place, and it only has, about 6 or something like that. Another low crime place, high crime place. So there's just no correlation between crime and a percentage of the state on retirees. Well, that's tax burden. I was going to say there's crime. That's tax burden. The crime was, let's see. I was looking at the crime there before educational institutes. Right here. Here's crime rate. So here you go. So here's high. That's probably DC right there. High crime rate. Very few. Will that be high? Oh, yeah. High crime rate. Very few retirees. I'm sure that's got to be DC. High crime. Few retirees. Low crime. Few retirees. That's probably Maine. Low crime. Few retirees. High crime. Few retirees. And then so there's just. So you got some states with high crime and low retirees, and in the low retirees, some crime with high crime and high retirees. Right here is beyond average here. That's probably California. That might be Florida. I don't know. But at the end of the day, you're saying there, that's California right there. Percentage of retirees as a percentage of the population. So you got California. I mean, at the end of the day, these are not the lowest crime states here, and yet they have the highest representation of retirees. Now, they're not necessarily high crime, but here's a high crime state, and that's got a sizable percentage of retirees relative to the population as a whole, the states as a whole. Here's a low crime one, same thing. There's just no correlation between. I mean, again, here's DC. I'm sure that's DC. Here's probably Maine, like I said, Montana or something like that. I don't know. But high crime, low percentage, low crime, low percentage, high crime, low percentage, low crime, low percentage. It's amazing. Tax burden. This is what I was pointing out. Again, so remember, California and New York have significantly high tax burdens. And yet, look, high tax burden, that's New York right there. This is probably California right there. And that they still have high populations of retirees relative to their overall population. Here's a low tax burden. I'm sure that's Florida. They have high percentage of retirees relative to population, even though they have low tax. Lower tax, higher tax, lower tax, higher tax, and anything on the right-hand side or going this way, going left to right, is going to have a higher percentage of retirees that live there as reflected by their overall population. And so here's low tax, no one. That's probably Wyoming. High tax, nobody. Low tax, high tax, low tax. I mean, it's amazing. I'm just stunned by this. So the tax burden is not reflective or indicative of the amount of retirees in a state. Crime burden is not indicative of the amount of retirees in a state. It's just not. Weather. So I'm sure this is New York and or Pennsylvania. This is probably Pennsylvania. It's probably New York. California is probably Florida. That's probably California right here. This is probably Florida right there. So the average temperature, and again, here's something that's low. I don't know what that is. Maybe Vermont. I don't know. High weather. That's who knows what that is. New Mexico. And so high warmth, not many retirees, or Nevada maybe. High warmth, not many retirees. Low cold, that's probably Alaska, not many retirees. Low cold, not many retirees. High warmth, not a bunch of retirees. Low warmth, a bunch of retirees. Man, isn't that just amazing, my friends, that all that stuff, educational density. So, we're going to live in a place with lots of schools like Boston. Nope. High percentage of density, high percentage of retirees. Low percentage of educational density, high percentage of retirees. High percentage of educational density, low percentage of retirees. Low percentage of educational density, low percentage of retirees. It's just, it's amazing to me, actually. I'm stunned by that. And that just goes back to the fact that the vast majority of retirees just don't move. They stay where they are. And so if they're in a place that has high crime and they retire, they're staying there. If they're in a place that's low crime and they retire, they're staying there. It doesn't matter what their wealth is either, because you would think if you're wealthy, you'd be able to move to a low crime, the best place to retire. And it doesn't happen. It's amazing. This finding is evident too, let's see, Both places have, talk about California right here. Florida, with a growth rate of retirees nearly equal to California, has one of the lowest tax burden in the country and is one of the rainiest as well. But both places have relatively high crime rates, and they're the top two in terms of retirees per capita. If we consider the density rates of retirees instead of the distribution, on the high end, West Virginia, Florida, Maine, Montana, and Pennsylvania has the highest share of retirees as a percentage of the state population, over 17% in each state. On the other end, Utah, Alaska, Texas, North Dakota, and Georgia have the least number of retirees relative to their overall state populations. Maine is one of the safest in the country, where Florida is one of the most dangerous. Similarly, Maine has the fourth highest tax burden in the country, where Florida has one of the lowest. And Florida is one of the wettest states, whereas Maine is about average. If taxes, crime, and weather cannot explain where retirees choose to live their wealthier and healthier lives, what can? This is going to be interesting. One indication of the new preferences among retirees is found in the urbanization of the retiree population over time. The percentage of retirees living in rural areas has fallen by 200% over the last 120 years or so, now accounting for less than one of every five retirees. That's even more than I would have thought, to be honest with you. So one of every five retirees still lives in a rural area. Instead, older Americans are increasingly living in suburbs and of the major cities like Los Angeles and Phoenix, or in the city centers of less dense cities like San Antonio and San Diego. For instance, the share of retirees living in the suburbs of cities increased by nearly 40% over the last 40 years, accounting for one of every two retirees. The urbanized retired population is likely choosing to stay near friends, family, and the cultural attractions like sporting events and theaters that they have come to know, and basically since they grew up. They went to the Atlanta Hawks game, the Atlanta Braves game as a kid with their folks. Now they're staying in, maybe not right in Atlanta city center, but they're staying in the area to go see the Braves. And Philadelphia, we live in South Jersey. No one left South Jersey. And when they did, they came back. It's weird. Even though it's high tax, they got Camden right next door, high crime. Philadelphia is crime infested, and yet these guys still come back. Now, they don't necessarily live in Philly. If they usually live in the suburbs, way out in Downingtown, PA, Bucks County, Westchester, or Haddonfield, or Cherry Hill, or something like that. But they still stayed right there in proximity to Philadelphia. They just hop on a train. It's very interesting. They raised on the Phillies and the Eagles. They stay in that area to still be part of that community that they know and love. I actually find that incredibly interesting, and it's indicative of, I think, of the sense of community that people need to feel. Community, my friends, is critical. It's critical. It really is. You're not going to live on, very, very few people are going to go out and live like Grizzly Adams out in their little homestead. Most people want to be part of a thriving community with people who are like them, who they can trust and they know. Finally, we consider how these trends vary by the income levels of retirees. Higher income households may be more able to afford to move to the stereotypically ideal retirement locations with warm temperatures and low crime rates. Lower income households, on the other hand, may be more compelled to move to less expensive areas in the country. But in fact, both groups are much less likely to move in retirement than past generations. High income retirees who have moved in the past year fell by 70% since 1964, now accounting for fewer than 1% of all. It's amazing. If we extend the analysis to include any retirees reporting they moved in the past 5 years, we see a similar trend. High income retirees are 39% less likely to move compared with previous generations. I find that amazing. So in summary, as retirees have become progressively healthier and wealthier, they're increasingly choosing to live in more expensive, culturally vibrant, urban, I'd say suburban areas of the country, and eschewing in growing numbers of lower cost, more remote rural areas. As a group, they do not seem to base their retirement decision on cost of living, weather, or crime rate. None of the variables were significantly associated with either the distribution or density of retirees. Amazing. So I wanted to share that with you, and I wanted to go down. This is just talk about like having qualified mortgages and debt. Well, actually, let's just see real quick. They're basically just talk about that we have less people on minimum wage, less people just that are having financial stress from a percentage of their income and whatnot. Yes, income inequality has gone higher, inequality, but less people are destitute. That's what they're saying. But I did want to share this one thing. That's interesting, actually. I'm not going to talk about income inequality because we talked about in the last episode where basically the wealthy have jumped up in their wealth because of their financial assets. A lot of people are living paycheck to paycheck, simply don't have the wealth to squirrel money away in financial assets that can compound over time. So because of that, it's given a rise to more income inequality, but don't get caught up by that because at the end of the day, a rising tide lifts all boats, and the folks at the bottom are still increasing their income and their wealth relative to what it was 30 years ago significantly. In fact, we saw the median wealth is up 50%, accounting for inflation from 1989 until the end of 2016. So a person retired in 1989 and a person retired in 2016, all things being equal, adjusted for inflation, the person retired in 2016 is 50% more wealthy than that person in 1989. Even though inequality has gone up. Why has inequality gone up? Because those people who have financial assets have been able to allow those things to compound over 30 years. And it's made them go like a, rocket ship while everybody else is just kind of going, but slowly but steadily. And that's not a bad thing. I thought this is, I want to say right here, we found the increasing vigor and abundance has changed where retirees choose to live out the years without work requirements. As constraints have fallen away, retirees have surprisingly decided in growing numbers to stay put. Talk about that. By far, the largest change among retirees is their wealth, which surged by over 100%. Again, that's averaged. I don't like that. I like the median, but mostly is watching TV. All right, now, all right, right here. This is fantastic. More generally, the data indicate that more attention should be given to unlocking the tremendous civic potential of retirees through new incentives and policy. With more wealth, education, and health than past generations, retirees represent one of the best opportunities available to address the needs of the country. Time spent volunteering, for instance, has hardly changed over the past years, even though retirees as a group have never been more able to give back their time and resources. This group could be deployed in the nation's public schools as mentors. They could be even more ambitiously. This is what I like. I talked about that last episode. The public-private partnership and redoing our infrastructure. The $14 trillion in financial asset wealth held by retirees could be pooled together in a publicly backed and tax-incentivized bonds that could fund wide-scale investments in infrastructure improvements such as bridges, ports, and highways. I could not agree with that more. Tax regulations could better incentivize in-life giving to address some of the more endemic and domestic challenges facing the country, perhaps by creating broader tax benefits for benefactors or heirs if giving is targeted at domestic priority like education infrastructure. And they talk again about TV. One of the other things that I wanted to point out here, I thought it was interesting. I guess I missed it. They did talk about the need for emergency right there. Similar right here. All right, so for policymakers, these data indicate that more needs to be done to build the financial asset wealth of lower wealth households, exactly, who are getting further left behind in retirement as the brokerage and retirement accounts of middle and high net worth households continue to compound in value. I like this one right here. Allowing retirement plan sponsors to focus on building both emergency and retirement savings in their ERISA plans remove a chief driver of pre-retirement spending and retirement account, since the broad lack of emergency savings among younger workers is driving premature cash out distributions. I actually 100% agree with that. If we're all told to have an emergency account, but we're also told we got to save. And if you're paycheck to paycheck and you're just able to squeeze away 3% to your retirement account, you don't have the excess cash to save away in an emergency account. So when times get tough, what do? You take a loan against your 401k or you cash it out outright. Neither of them, and for spending for emergency account is something I'd recommend for sure. And so let me just close this. I think this is one of the best reports I've ever read. I'm a huge fan. I'm going to try to get this guy on my podcast. I just think this report is fundamentally one of the best reports that's out there. I'm stunned by the research. And my friends, I read a ton of this stuff. And if I'm stunned by it, you should be too. Key takeaways, absolutely. You're not likely to move. You're just not. So find the place you want to live, and you're most likely going to stay there. And that's okay. I'm just telling you, that's okay. Find a place that you like, and you're going to park your butt down there, and you're never going to leave. And I'm fine with that. Now, some folks will chase their kids to Phoenix from, Tuscaloosa, Alabama, whatever, but most are just going to stay where they are. And ironically, most children are going to stay where they are as well. People just are not as mobile as what I had thought, actually. And I moved a bunch, and I thought that was more common than it is, but it's just not. So that's interesting. Secondly, stop watching so much doggone TV. If you go to retirement and spend 4 hours a day watching TV, I just don't think that's good. In fact, with studies prove that's just not healthy. Now, again, is watching TV lead to bad behaviors or bad behaviors lead to watch? I don't know. But at the end of the day, TV is it's the stupid box. Stop. It doesn't do good. It decreases morale. It makes you nervous. It sensationalizes stuff that's just not likely to happen. Just stop. And so that's it. I hope you found this helpful. If you like what we're talking about here, I'll put the link in the show notes. Give me a thumbs up. Always helpful, my friends. Thumbs up are always helpful. Don't forget to subscribe. Hit the subscribe button and that little bell. I don't know if I see it on here. No, I don't see it, but that little bell down below will give you updates on the next time I produce content here on the Heritage Wealth Planning YouTube channel. So look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks, guys.